Hello, and welcome to Stanford Care's monthly community health talk series. I'm Ju-Ha Huang, professor of medicine at Stanford University and one of the co-directors for the Center for Asian Health Research and Education at Stanford. I'm pleased to bring you this series of talks co-sponsored by Stanford Health Library and the Vincent V.C. Wu Foundation. I am very pleased for this talk to welcome Professor Karen Kim, who will speak to us on our path forward addressing the Asian leadership paradox. Disparities among Asian Americans are not limited to health, but also extend to how we are included as researchers, scholars, and leaders. While Asian Americans are very well represented across the STEM fields, the inability for Asian Americans to achieve parity in leadership needs to be addressed. How do we move the needle to maximize opportunities for an inclusive environment to achieve success, and what mechanisms should we implement to change the leadership paradox? Dean Kim will discuss effective strategies and lessons learned from both a personal and leadership perspective as one of a limited number of Asian American medical school deans. Professor Karen Kim was just recently named the Dean of the College of Medicine at Penn State University in September of this year. She currently holds the Dorothy, Foehr, Huck, and J. Lloyd Huck Chair in Rural Health Research and leads the College of Medicine's education, research, and clinical missions, as well as culture of innovation. In addition to being the Dean at Penn State University, Dean Kim is a nationally recognized leader in health disparities research, curricular innovation, and public policy. Her research focuses on the rigorous development and evaluation of multi-level strategies to advance cancer health equity among marginalized and vulnerable populations, including Asians. As a founder and director of the Center for Asian Health Equity, a community academic partnership that she started while she was at the University of Chicago, Dean Kim is a national leader on public policies for the inclusion of Asian Americans and underserved populations in research. And we met last year when we invited her to the Stanford Gastric Cancer Summit, where she provided one of our keynote speeches. And I am absolutely delighted to have her join us for this talk. She is Penn State, the College of Medicine's first female dean and the first Korean American woman to hold such a title nationally. So with that, I welcome you, Dean Kim, and I'm very excited to hear what you have to talk to us about. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to CARES for inviting me. It's a real honor to be here and among sort of friendly faces. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a second so we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own personal path and then maybe some lessons learned on how we should be thinking about leadership as Asian Americans, because there's just not enough of us, despite having a tremendous number of people that are Asian American that should be considered for leadership. And I'm going to share some of that data with you. So maybe my path. This is how I started. These are my parents and my brother and I. My parents were immigrants from Korea. They went to graduate school at the University of Chicago, and I was born there with my brother. And we really thought that they thought we were going to move back to Korea, but I think they just got absorbed with American life and actually fit right in. My brother with his little geeky glasses and just really assimilated. My mother was the associate superintendent of the Chicago Board of Education, and my father had studied business and then had a very big import-export company. Sort of that's how I grew up, and really grew up on the south side of Chicago, which if you're not from Chicago, you might not know, but this is the largest contiguous African-American community in the country. And so this was the community that I most closely assimilated with. My brother and I were the only non-African-Americans in pretty much all of our elementary school bringing, so I knew very little about Asian health. And this is my mother this is my mother in March of 1995. She was giving a lecture to about 1,000 people. She looked pretty great. But at that time, she was already diagnosed with probably liver cancer from hepatitis B. And just a few months later, she actually died. And it was really shocking to me at the time because I was a GI fellow, so the type of physician that goes on to treat hepatitis B, and I never had learned about this huge disparity between Asians and non-Asians in terms of hepatitis B. 1 in 12 Asian Americans having it, a quarter of them might die from this. And so while I knew nothing about Asian health, I decided that if I didn't do something at that point in my life, then probably it would be very difficult to move the needle in terms of trying to understand Asian health disparities. And when Dr. Huang contacted me last year about what he's been doing with gastric cancer over the last several years, and asked me to, sort of participate, I was just overjoyed to see that most of the awareness that we get for diseases that may disproportionately affect Asian Americans have to come from really true advocacy in order to be able to get research to be able to continue to move the needle. So when I think about things, and I know Dr. Ko was here last month and probably talked a lot about sort of the similar themes. And these are sort of what I think about a multi-pronged, multi-level strategy to address some of the inequities for Asian Americans. Certainly when we think about the culture and climate with aggression, microaggressions, racism, but some of the big pillars are, thinking about data and research, opportunities for leadership, what are we doing to train the next generation of practitioners and scholars, how do we think about community engagement, and then what are the policies and advocacy, what is policy and advocacy and areas that we should really focus on in order to make sure that we can be included in the discussion when it comes to equal distribution of the health. And so one theme that you often hear about is that about this interchangeable Asian. And that is we kind of are all the same. We look alike. People can't tell us apart. And that sometimes extends into our patients. I mean, I know when, I don't even remember what doctor program Sandra O was on, but whenever I had patients, they would often ask me, oh, you look just like her. And I could never see myself. I just decided to put our pictures up together. And other than having, eyes, nose, mouth, and maybe wearing a medical attire, I just didn't think that there was any similarity. However, I think that was one way that my patients would try to bond with me to try to find some commonality by thinking about having sort of some conversation about somebody that they thought they might know. But this can be a real problem for how we get lumped together. And of course, the climate is really heating up. We certainly saw that during COVID and racism, although with the racism that came out with COVID, although I would have to say this has been in existence since, the 1800s, that we have been sort of ostracized as a collective community. From the research area, this concept of foreign influence has really been a challenge in terms of how we look at how the federal government thinks about foreign influence, particularly from China. Many of our scientists have been discriminated against sort of under federal regulation to make sure that we do not have infiltration of our technology leaving this country and going to other countries. And of course, with what's happening with affirmative action, that has really been a big challenge for all of us to understand how can we move forward in an inclusive environment and still make sure that we are able to be represented. So one of the things that has been a big problem is just the real paucity of research among sort of disaggregated Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander. Really, we are the most understudied racial ethnic group in the United States. Only about 0.2% of federal grants, and from 1966 to 2000, only 0.01% of articles included AANHPI in our study samples. And so if you really don't have this data, it's really difficult to understand where the challenges are. And we have really been lumped together and often excluded from studies altogether, particularly among those who are limited English proficient. So as a result, only 10% of all federally collected data is actually even reported. And so this is just a continuing problem. I'm happy to say that the NIH has really taken the lead on recognize this being a problem. And in the last few months, they funded the first ever longitudinal epidemiological cohort of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, which is just amazing. I know Stanford, University of Chicago is our part of I think the 4 that were selected as the inaugural cohort. So I think we will see progress going forward. And this came about because people really advocated for the lack of inclusion of Asian Americans. But we, as I'll show you, we still have a lot of work to do. I think when you think about our data, often the way that we are categorized as an Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community is we're either omitted, we are aggregated into one, or they think that if they look at one population, it's similar to another. And we know that we're so different as communities. And I think there's so many barriers that we know about our whether you're foreign born, whether you're culturally acculturated, whether you're limited English proficient, and then of course, multiple intersectionality. So often we really are ignored. And so it takes efforts like CARE, the work what Dr. Huang is doing to really raise awareness about those diseases and that disproportionately impact Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities. This is data that came out in eLife in November 2022. And basically what they did was they looked from 1999 to 2019 at National Science Foundation funding. And what they found were that proposals by white broken down by race ethnicity, and they found that proposals by white PIs were consistently funded at rates above the overall average, while proposals by most other groups are funded at rates below average, and the Asian American cohort or Asian cohort is represented in the green bar all the way at the bottom. And in fact, if you looked at the cumulative advantage or disadvantage by Asian Americans, it trumped any other population. And you can see the red is the white population. And again, these are looking at NSF funding, and the green bar is Asian Americans. And you can see over time the disparity and gap. So the cumulative advantage versus the cumulative disadvantage has grown astronomically only for the Asian American population. You can see in the little tiny graph in the left-hand corner, the difference between the other racial ethnic minority populations. But for Asian Americans to white, that difference is almost 23,000 grants by 2019. So if they're not funding research, if they're not funding our researchers, then we have a big problem, and we need to continue to advocate. I think the other problem is that this came out in SEL 2022, looking at underrepresentation of Asian awardees across US biomedical research prizes. And, I think leadership is all about being able to be recognized. And we make up about 31% of trainees, whether they're graduate students or postdocs, we meaning Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, 21.3% of faculty. And yet we only have, as a ethnic group, we only have 6.8% of prestigious national biomedical research prizes. And many of these prizes were never awarded to an Asian American, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander. And again, there's so many potential causes, including sort of this invisibility. Certainly, there's this club membership mentality that nominations and selections often happen among friends and peers, and often we're not at the table. And of course, the just blatant discrimination. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about sort of my path. If you look at US medical school faculty by race, and this is data from 2021 from the AANHPI faculty roster. If you look at number of faculty, number of chairs, and then deans of medical schools, you can see that if you look at the normal trajectory of someone to become a dean, for instance, it's usually via being a chair. So if you look at where we are by race ethnicity, you can see that, for instance, African Americans make up about 4% of chairs and 12% of deans. The Hispanic population, 3.5% of chairs and 2% of deans, and Asians make up about 10% of chairs and only 1.5% of deans. And we make up a huge percentage of the faculty. So you start to see these trends that don't seem to make sense given the size of our population that are involved in the health profession. So I looked at the AANHPI Council of Deans directory, because now I'm one of them, and I just physically counted, just looking at pictures and last names. And you can see here the percentage right here. So about 4% of deans are Black men, 4% are Black women, about 2% of deans are South Asian men. There's one South Asian woman, there's 4 East Asian men dean and 1 East Asian woman dean, and that would be me. And so we have a lot of work to do in terms of, you know, how is this happening and how are we not better represented at what you probably think is one of the highest levels that we want to achieve as physicians. And so I was looking at data, and this was published in the New England Journal in 2022. The graph on the left are URM faculty trends. You can see full professors, department chairs, and deans in that top line in purple. So we've been seeing a tremendous amount of progress, which is really, really great. The graph that you see on the right is a picture of the U.S. medical deans by dean type. And you see underrepresented in medicine in the blue bars on the bottom. And what you see is the non-underrepresented deans in the green bar on the top. And what is really shocking is that since we don't fit into the blue bars because we're not really considered underrepresented in medicine, we are depicted in the green bars up at the top. So again, really, really an invisible group. When I just showed you, the data suggests that we would be not even probably on this bar at the very bottom. And so the ability for us to be present is really important. And you know, everyone says if it's not measured, it's not managed. And so I am now working with this AAMC Council of Deans to really have an Asian bar, because we will be at the lowest of, we'll have a new color, it'll be all the way at the bottom. And if we don't recognize that, then there's no push to make any changes. So this is a real problem, and I'm really happy to be able to try to represent this big population and make sure that this is better data informed. So I'll tell you a little bit about my dean search, which is what I never thought that I was going to be a dean. It was never something that I had thought about. But several years ago, I got called by a search firm. They kept bothering me to kind of think about this position. And I was like, boy, I'm not even really thinking about this. I've never been a chair. I was, you know, just doing kind of my own thing, doing research and kind of minding my own business. So I decided, well, maybe I'll just take a look and see. And I was shocked by kind of the series of events that happened in this first search. So first I was meeting with a faculty who was, I don't know, like vice dean for the clinical operations or something, but I would be his boss. And so I sat down to interview with him, and the first question he asked me is, have you seen Crazy Rich Asians? And of course I hadn't seen it then, but I was thinking, well, oh, wait a minute, we have so many things to talk about in a half hour, and you're going to ask me this question? I was quite taken aback. And then the search firm, you know, my daughter is a really big golfer. And I was talking to the search firm while I was watching my daughter score. And I think she might've gotten a bogey or something. And I was like, oh no, she got a bogey. And so then she said, wait, are you a tiger mother? And I thought, what in the world? This is, you know, such a strange series of questions while I'm trying to apply to be this dean. And then when I was with the faculty committee, they were really concerned that with my portfolio, and that they didn't think this was a geographic location that did not have a lot of Asians, but they were very worried that I wouldn't be able to do my Korean research. I don't even research Koreans. So it was just a whole bunch of bias and assumptions that were made. And I was really shocked. Interestingly, I was offered the position, but I realized that if this was the way that my interview went, that it would not be a place that would be a good fit for me. So I turned this away. But I did ask the senior search consultant at the time, you know, in her opinion, why is it that that we see so few Asians as deans? I was really struck by this as I sort of started looking into this data. And she said, you know, it's very challenging to place Asians into a dean position, especially if they have an accent. And I was really surprised. And then she said, but you speak English well. So I said, thank you, you do as well. So so this is the bias that we're heading into. And so you wonder, why is it that we are not seeing enough Asian leaders? And I think everything that I've talked about to this point really is a really good example of why there are so many barriers put in front of us. And then I think about sort of is there a secret sauce to success? And I took on this deanship role on September 1st of this year. So it's very new to me. And I would have to say that probably every dean has their own pathway. I would say that mine is maybe a bit unusual. 70 to 80% of all deans have been a chair. I have never been a chair. I was the vice provost of research at the University of Chicago prior to coming to this role. And so I had kind of led all of the research strategy and infrastructure for the University of Chicago. And when I think about that role as well, it was very unusual that I got asked to take on that role. And I remember when they called me and asked me if I wanted to do it, I said, no. I mean, why would I want to be your first failure? And the reason is they had never had a physician. I'm a clinician scientist. I'm not a PhD. And at the university has never had sort of just a physician in this role. And so this is sort of the story of my success is that taking on leadership roles that where I didn't seem to fit the normal mold, and sort of, I'm going to tell you some of my successes to inspire you that you can do things if you do a good job. So the first thing I think is really important is to define your North Star. What is it that you hope to accomplish? What do you see are the opportunities and the challenges? And do you see a pathway forward given that opportunity? And so for me, my North Star has always been the thinking about ways to have improve or reduce disparities. And it has been sort of when I've done things with medical education, the research that I do, the positions I've taken on, I've always kept that as something that has been in the back of my mind. How do we have inclusive innovation and how do we have broader impact? And so for me, I think the biggest reason for me, for my success is when my mother died in 1997, shortly after that, or 1996, shortly after that, knowing nothing about Asian Americans and Asian American health, I started a nonprofit. And that has, a quarter century later, it's running very, very strong, Asian Health Coalition. And in 2014, we combined with the University of Chicago to form the Center for Asian Health Equity, and 4 pillars that we worked around, which was engagement, research, education, training, and policy and advocacy. And this is just a bit of my really, really diverse team. And we've had tremendous, tremendous success in building sort of both the local, regional, and national models for engagement, research, and training. And this is a few years old, but this just looks at sort of the portfolio of funding that we have. I'm sure CARES has even more, but we really had a very diverse portfolio, largely driven by federal funding. We got a lot from our state, corporate funding and foundation. And because, sort of success begets success, the more successful we were, the more we had people calling us and really just trying to give us money. And so we grew from a small $50,000 grant and 1 staff to about 28 staff now, and have really, really branched out to be kind of a health equity center. And it's been really rewarding work. But as many of you may know, running a nonprofit organization is not easy, and being able to get through audits and stay mission focused and not just chase dollars, it's all, and understand how to be very fiscally responsible. I think that experience, compared to anything else I have done, has really prepared me for this leadership job as the dean. I think the other thing that has been very important is to find your voice. And to use it. I'm always the first at the podium to raise my voice when I hear that somebody has said something wrong. People are like, oh no, she's in the room again. But it kind of, it makes you visible, and it really allows you to get a seat at the table. And so this is one of the voices that I had. I was part of I was one of the co-investigators of our Precision Medicine Initiative All of Us research program, one of the first cohorts that came out when this was funded by the NIH. And they showed this, the future of health begins with you. And they had this picture of all these different people. And I was struck that there were no Asian faces on this picture. And so I raised my hand. At the time, the head of the NIH was there. All the bigwigs were there because this was like really exciting initiative, and it's really an amazing initiative. And I said, "You don't really mean all of us. You mean some of us." And so this was really I kind of agitated and said, "Why aren't Asian Americans included?" And really have I think helped transform this program. We received enormous grant. We, meaning the Asian Health Coalition, the nonprofit arm, received a very large grant, and we are running the national strategy for the recruitment and enrollment of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders across 40 states, Hawaii and Guam, and have really had tremendous impact on being able to increase the representation of Asians in this study. And for those of you who don't know this study, the goal of this study is to collect a million individuals and follow them longitudinally, with about 50%, at least 50% being underrepresented in research, which includes Asian Americans. And we had really big impact. When we started this program, you can see kind of our Asian recruitment course started there in September, and with a break through the pandemic. And we have really tremendously increased the number of both Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders in study through intentional community partnerships. So that's really, I think that was the result of me sort of asking them, is this not a sum of us rather than an all of us program? So this type of sort of finding your voice is important, and then being impactful. So like I said, I was the vice provost for research at the University of Chicago. They had never had a physician before. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know any of the buildings. I really didn't know any of the science except for kind of what happens in medicine. And but I knew how to write grants, and I was really going to be able to focus on sort of areas that I thought were core strengths, which means that bring out the hospital and use the hospital and health system to propel university research. And so this is my Be Impactful slide. So I started at the Green Bar, and within the first year and a half, I had raised the university's total research awards to over $150 million, and our expenditures, which is the kind of really the hallmark of where you are as a research institution. I had raised the expenditures to over 500 million, and now it's over almost 700 million when I left. So again, I think it's really important that you just, if you take on a role, that you find a way to be impactful, however you define that. So I'm just going to say, I think that there's a few things that are really important when you think about your leadership path forward. One is really to establish a high functioning team and then delegate. You think that you have to sort of hold on to everything, that, you need to be able to do everything. But my I think key to success is that I have hired people who are just smarter than me, know more than me in certain areas, and I delegate after you make really clear what the expectations are. And so we've really you just grow very quickly by being able to do that. I think you should be very data driven. They all say that what is measured is managed, and that's really true. And data usually doesn't lie. You have to just put the context around it. I always tell my mentees to be prepared. If you're going to go meet somebody, make sure you understand who you're meeting, and make sure you have read about them, that you know yourself, that you have areas that you want to talk about. And I feel that's the same way when faculty come to meet, have an agenda. Why are you meeting me? I also think I divide people in general two different categories. You're either a problem solver or you're a problem bringer. I think faculty in general tend to be problem bringers. They want to tell you about all the problems, and yet very often they don't bring solutions to those problems. And it's very clear to me, I divide my world into two kinds of people. And I gravitate towards those people who, obviously can bring problems, but give me a solution. So, and that's how I usually form my administration, no matter where I've been. And I also think that we really need to lead unapologetically. And I think if you were kind of at some of the stereotypes for Asians in leadership, I think we tend not to do that as well. So I wonder if there's sort of a collective path forward. I know that Stanford leads the way in so many things in terms of what we think about Asian leadership and Asian health and leading disparities. But mentorship is critically important, and so is sponsorship. People who can kind of open the door. I think it's really important to think about the next generation of scholars and trailblazers by engaging our students. And I know for our All of Us Precision Medicine program, we have worked with APAMSA and have had recently a call for APAMSA organizations to partner with us. I think we had over 50 chapters trying to reach out. So we are really leveraging the power and the creativity of kind of the younger generation. Join committees. And then when you're on those committees, be impactful. And join national organizations. And if you don't know national organizations or people, then ask for help. I think it's important that we amongst ourselves embed a culture of nomination. When you see an award, nominate your peers to make sure that we can get sort of a critical mass of people in positions that can help others. I know Stanford, I think, has a leadership academy for Asian Americans, but I think it's really important that we continue to kind of support each other and think about skills that allow us to be better leaders. And I'm just going to end with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., which is that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter, and we really matter. So I'm going to end there and open it up to questions, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. And fortunately, we actually have quite a bit of time for discussions because I think that there's a lot to dive into with what you presented there. And we have a lot of questions there, but I really I can relate to your issue with people who are problem bringers versus problem solvers. I had one great mentor and boss who basically says, "You can come to me with any problem, but you better propose a solution while you're at it."
That's right. Yeah, I mean, you tend to run away from people who always bring you a problem. If they don't have a solution, you just run away from them because we're too busy, right?
Right. Okay, so we have a lot of questions from the audience, and so I'll delve into them. One of your focuses as the dean of the medical school is really to take charge of the medical students and help them. And one of our questions is, how do you think that medical students can advocate for parity in leadership? And what advice would you give to medical students, and I'm assuming particularly Asian American medical students?
Yeah, I really, really enjoy working with medical students. And I led I led the nation's first health disparities curriculum when I was at the University of Chicago, which really, really influenced ability of, which really diversified our class. And that was really by speaking with students. So one, I think, join organizations if there's a local APAMSA chapter, not that you have to do something with Asian students. But I do think that it's important to get in front of people and be visible. If there's a cause that you want, if there's research that you want to do, don't be shy to ask for help. And I think it's really important as a student as well that you latch on to sort of good mentors. You whether it's in lectures that you see people that you really are inspired by, or research that really moves you. And your mentors don't even necessarily need to be at your same school, but really reach out to people and ask to, can I go and have coffee with you? I think faculty in general, and even me as a dean, but when I was vice provost of research, I was always meeting students. And so I think it's really important that you reach out to people. I think as students, sometimes you feel a little bit intimidated, or you want to sort of sit and wait. But start early. I mean, you've got Dr. Huang there. He's like leading the national strategy for thinking about how we're getting gastric cancer on the map and research. reach out to people and don't be shy.
So, from your experience, what do you think are characteristics of good mentors? Like, how would you identify a good mentor?
Yeah, I think it's somebody who can actually spend a little time with you. Somebody who I think sometimes a good mentor is somebody who's connected enough that can really help you and give you good advice. I think it's really obvious when you meet with people who really take some interest in you. And so I think sometimes we try to find people who have the biggest and brightest resume, and sometimes it's not those people. It's people that are passionate about the work that they do and then really take interest in you as an individual. Those individuals really are the best mentors.
So you talk about mentorship and sponsorship. It's a big topic these days. But for the group, a lot of people might not know really the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. So explain that to us.
Yeah, so the way I think about sponsorship is sort of like mentorship on steroids, and really a sponsor is somebody who is going to, I think, open bigger and broader doors, somebody who's going to sort of put you into a situation that you may not get like from your local environment. So maybe that person who's going to get you onto that national committee, somebody who's going to recommend you for something beyond what you might see kind of in your everyday work. And really somebody who kind of opens that door for you. I think there's a pretty fine line between when mentorship stops and when sponsorship begins, and often it can almost be the same person, but often the sponsor is someone who really may be more on a national stage or has a bigger and broader ability to really influence your pathway.
And so I'm really proud of you. I mean, the fact that you took this position.
Thank you.
And you are the first Asian female dean of a medical school, and you took such a unique pathway. But I mean, we see these barriers constantly, and you were fortunate, because of your achievements, to be identified as and given a chance to be a dean. What do you think the barriers are? You've talked about all these kind of prejudices that they have, and like I love that one. Oh, you speak English well, right? It's like I was born here.
Yeah. I know when the search person said that to me, I said, and she was Caucasian. I said, thank you. You do too. And she looked at me like I was crazy, but I was like, that's how I'm looking at you too, right?
No, I mean, so like what advice would you give to people who want to be promoted, and how, like, as a dean, do you think you're going to be able to promote Asian faculty? And I say that in the sense that, so I've been in situations where I've been told, and I won't name names, but I've been told, because I've had Asian bosses and I'm an Asian male, and we're technically almost an overrepresented minority in the field of medicine, right? It's like I would love to promote you, but I can't because you're an Asian male.
What?
Yeah, no, I've heard, it's like, because they're Asian male, so they think that, it's like, oh, we're promoting our own people, where that happens all the time. And so, you're almost in a catch-22 position. You're highly capable, but the perception is that, all of a sudden, since the higher up person is an Asian male, that they can't promote an Asian male, otherwise it looks suspicious.
Yeah, we often get in our own way, right? So I think that there's so many things to think about. There's so many barriers. I mean, there's only 157 deans in the country, right? And so it's to me just actually kind of comical when I think that I'm in this position. I'm just like kind of have to laugh. I got a C+ in organic chemistry, you guys, right? And so I'm like, this is I'm a teen, and it's really and so what I think about is just, what is my North Star? I want to have bigger and broader impact in all of my life. I think my success is not because I've been in the academic community. I think my success has been because I have done so many things outside of just pure the academic pathway. I was one of 13 people elected to be the board of our only safety net hospital in the state of Illinois. I had a ton of research, but it was all those outside things that really brought me so much perspective in what it is to be a leader. I do think that we tend to be sort of our own bamboo ceiling. Like, we don't want another Asian. We want, because I don't know whether that diminishes our own, and my minorities can, in general, sometimes can be like this, like you're the only one. I think the other thing is my success in this interview process, because I was told that this was an incredibly competitive pool, and I don't think I was very competitive. I was just like kind of being me. I was 100% authentic in the interview. I mean, I didn't lie. They were like, have you ever recruited a chair before? I'm like, no. I mean, that's like one of the main jobs of a dean. I'm like, no, but I'm really smart and I can do it. And when I had an answer that was a no, I always gave a different example of something that was like that, but I'm really good at picking people. I mean, I had 250 staff and 250 faculty that were working under my Office of Research. I can pick people. And so, being able to change the narrative. The other thing is that I like people, and I think part of leadership is having that really high emotional intelligence, because it's not really about how much you know, it's how you can navigate kind of those really challenging conversations, how you get around conflict. That is really where I think, if I were to sort of say in general, sort of a stereotype of Asians, which I'm reluctant to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, we tend to be a more conflict adverse community than others. And leadership is all about jumping just right into conflict and being able to deal with that. I mean, you have to get very uncomfortable with saying no and being able to sort of look for the win-win.
So I mean, that's an interesting point. So do you think that it's one of the reasons that we're underrepresented in leadership is that it's somewhat cultural, and how we're raised, and
I think it's totally. I don't think. I mean, maybe we have a little bit about it, but I think it is very externally that we are not chosen, probably from a very large, both conscious and unconscious bias. And I think, I mean, for this woman to tell me point blank that it's very difficult to place an Asian into leadership was shocking to me, as if she was talking to someone who wasn't Asian, right? So it was really, really surprising. And then, if you have an accent, she said it's almost impossible. And you see it played out in the data. And we're over 20% of the graduating medical school class. So my platform as a dean is I'm going to bring people up. I'm going to raise people up. I mean, and if I don't do that with being in this position, then I feel like I've really not only failed myself, but failed a whole population in some ways. Because I mean, there's never been a Korean American dean as a College of Medicine, a woman as a dean of the College of Medicine. I mean, that's crazy. So so Seoul National University was calling me, and every Korean magazine. So I mean, I responded to every single request, because I feel like I have to represent. I just have to.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, as you know, there's a lot of people, a lot of Asians who are experts in their field, right? How what additional advice would you give to people who really are considered experts but haven't made the transition to leadership? I mean, because I think one of the things, in order for the bamboo ceiling to be broken, is that there have to be individuals like you who get above the bamboo ceiling and do the sponsorship and the mentorship to help others up. But there are very few people there, right? So you need a cohort of people who are experts who are going to get up there. What advice would you give based on
So first of all, not everybody, I mean, you can lead in everyday life. You don't have to be a dean to be a leader. I think whatever you do, you should you should try to be the best in whatever it is that you're doing. So if you are an expert in, I don't know, like colon cancer prevention, which is sort of where I was, then you should, you know, take every opportunity to not only do that research, but then be connected to societies. I was on the National Colorectal Cancer Steering Committee, which is a big nationally recognized committee. And so I think they put, you know, 10 or 12 people to be on the steering committee, and I was one of them. And then when you're on that, you know, make an impact, you know, make sure that people know you. That's how you do things, you know. Somehow don't just be a quiet doer, you know, make sure that you really fully participate in everything you do, or don't do it. I mean, it's worse to sort of try to be a resume builder and then sort of be invisible in that process. So that's how I think about it. And so you should, I think you want to aspire to be really an expert in something, because otherwise, you know, you're not good at anything, right? But I think the other thing that's really important to remember is that sometimes the way we think about leadership is wrong in my mind. The way they think about deans or chairs are often people who have the most research, the most publications, the most you know, recognition. But when you think about leadership is about really promoting other people. And research is really about taking care of yourself, like getting your grant, getting your paper, being the first author, being the last author. But that all falls by the wayside as you sort of climb the ladder. It may be the first way to get your foot in the door, but then you really have to make sure that you are recognized and seen in every single thing that you do, not in an obnoxious way, but to be impactful.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. One other kind of, I don't know, sensitive topic. The Asian category is very large, right? I mean,
Yeah.
say here, Asians represent 60% of the world's population, right? So, you know, just, you know, calling ourselves Asian, we aggregate significantly. So just in the scope of your talk in terms of leadership and stuff like that, you know, are there issues with, you know, aggregating Asians together, or do we?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. It makes no sense. We're so different from each other. You know, it's really challenging, and you know, because you do research, sometimes in order to get a big enough population to do your studies, you have to just go as an Asian American cohort. But really, if you really want to make any sense of research, you have to look at disaggregated groups, because our cultural norms, the food that we eat, our immigration history, even our biology can be different, you know, based on what geographic region you are. And also, being Asian doesn't mean that, you know, that you identify being Asian. I mean, you can be kind of, it really doesn't make that much sense. And certainly by aggregating us, the data doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I think from a kind of, when you think about from a population standpoint, or if you're thinking about sort of leadership, you probably have to aggregate in order to even have a big enough number to have a discussion. But really, it's everything is about disaggregating groups. And I'll give you an example, even this Asian cohort. So the NIH is really excited about putting together this first epidemiologic cohort. But then we're really arguing about which groups, because we want disaggregated groups, and yet they're still having, in order to have enough, they're sort of throwing some of the groups together, like a Southeast Asian group. And so from a research perspective and probably life perspective, it's very challenging.
Yeah, I think kind of being Asian American can be challenging, because we can be an overrepresented minority in certain cases. You know, we often don't fit in the, you know, the underrepresented minority situation, where we're oftentimes in limbo.
But we're not white. But we're not white.
So because, for example, like in health, you know, we're very underrepresented. I mean, the statistics that you pointed out are glaring, especially, you know, the
NSF data. I mean, really, why wasn't that on the New York Times?
Right. I mean, it's striking. But then, you know, but then in the field of medicine, you know, we're over, I guess, overrepresented.
We are.
You know, on our current population. And you know, even me as an Asian, I struggle with that. in that it's often it's hard, oftentimes hard to strike that balance. Basically.
It is hard. I mean, I know that when I present the data on deans, chairs, and faculty, broken down by race, ethnicity, it somehow really offends other minority groups. But that's the data. It's not a judgment. I mean, it's just the way the data falls. I'm not saying that somebody else doesn't deserve, but we deserve as well, right? So I'm not saying that I want to take away from someone, but what this has become is sort of this zero-sum game, and that's not what it is, right?
What would I've also heard some other controversial or different perspectives. Let's say that people don't like the term. Certain Asians in America don't like the term disparity, right?
Mhm.
Because, and I actually I understand that now, and it's actually almost more like inequality more than disparity, right? Because it's almost like victim language, right? And they don't like this. They don't want to be perceived as the minority. How would you address people like that who have this perception of they don't?
I just look at the data. I just look at the data. If you look at hepatitis B, for instance, I don't know that there's any more, and you can say inequality. I don't know that there's any disease that has difference between populations more than hepatitis B, right? I mean, we make up 50% of the burden of hepatitis B in the United States is in one of our Asian American communities. I don't know. I wonder what the data is on gastric cancer.
It's similar. So the data,
Yeah, it's similar, right?
you can almost interchange gastric cancer.
Yeah. And so I mean, regardless of what we think about it, that's really kind of the reality. And if we don't change policy, and if we don't advocate for this, no one cares. I mean, really, there's not that much interest in our populations, frankly, because of what you just said, because we're not underrepresented in medicine. No one cares that we're underrepresented in leadership. People just don't care, right? And so we have to make a compelling argument. So it's hard doing Asian American research because we have to advocate for the funds, then we have to and justify it with really crappy data because there's so little published. So then there's nothing that's believable, and they want us to use Asian cohorts, but those are different than Asian American cohorts. Then we have to get the research. If we can get the research on bad data because you don't even have enough data, it's very, very challenging. And then on top of that, there's so much bias against Asian researchers. You see that in that NSF study. I mean, where are we compared to other racial ethnic minority groups? So no matter what you want to believe, there's a problem.
Absolutely. And I think there's that data on research grants where there was the huge.
I mean, it's shocking.
It's unacceptable.
And people don't want to believe it. It's like, okay, you did the report. This is what the data shows. Why do you just sort of ignore that?
Well, we're glad we have people like you to really, basically, if we don't advocate for this, who will, right?
That's right.
So, I mean, I think again to those students who are coming up, it really get involved. I think it's important to get involved and to learn that get to know the data so that you can speak factually and eloquently. It's a process. It's going to take years, decades, to make progress. But for the first time in my life, I actually feel that we are making progress.
We are making big progress.
We've started to hit that that inflection point where there's noticeable change. We see noticeable increases in publications related to Asian health. We see increases in grants related to Asian diseases. And it really has happened, pretty recently.
It really has. And I think it's from advocacy, like things that you're doing. It makes a difference. I don't think that there's an intentional, I don't think the exclusion of Asians, I don't think is intentional. I just think that there's not that much data. I think that there are communities that have far worse problems than we do. I mean, there's no doubt. But we have problems too that need to be addressed. And I think now the NIH and federal organizations are actually have really had a big change. And I do think it's very recent. And I think a lot of that has to do with advocacy and agitation in a very calm, collective way to sort of just put data in front of people. And then it speaks for itself. It almost always does.
Well, I hope that this is also the inflection point for the future of Asian leaders, especially Asian female leaders, and getting in roles like the dean. I mean, we really need more Asian representation in terms of chairmanship positions and dean positions.
We do.
And again, we are extremely. I was excited to hear that you were named the dean at Penn State College of Medicine, and so again, my congratulations to you. Would you like to make any concluding remarks regarding the topic today before we?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just follow your passion and do what you think is right. I really strongly believe that. I also believe that don't lose sight of the things that are important to you in sort of wherever your path is that is going forward. So even though I ended up in rural Pennsylvania, a lot of my research was doing rural health anyway. I really went there because I saw that while rural health is very different than Asian health and other types of minority health, it's still taking care of a population that's completely underserved. And so for me, I was really excited about this opportunity. It's not exactly what I ever thought, that I'm going to end up in South Central Pennsylvania, but I just love it there, and I see so many opportunities. And so I think it's applying kind of what is your North Star, and then where you think you're going to have impact, and then going there and try to make a difference. And I really think that's the way I've led my life, and I think regardless of my kind of crazy pathway to getting here, it's really by being able to stay very true to myself, and I encourage people to do that. I also want to say that please reach out to me. I am very interested in mentorship and sponsorship. I'm happy to give advice. I never have a shortage of things that I want to say, and so if you want to reach out to me and have a conversation, I really welcome that. Although I'm sure Nina Lee, who is on this, who struggled so much to ever get me to respond to her, it might take a few emails before I respond, but I'm really I'm trying to do better, and I really try to respond to you if you reach out. But I welcome conversation.
Well,
and mainly I want to thank Dr. Hong for your leadership, Nina and Amy and others on the phone for really your patience and your grace in putting up with me to get here today, and for the invitation.
Well, thank you very much, Dean Kim. One of the reasons we had trouble getting a hold of you is because we had your old University of Chicago.
Yeah.
So now we know your new one at Penn State. So with that, we'll conclude today's community health talk. Again, thank you so much to Dean Kim for that wonderful talk. The next community health talk will be on January 23rd of next year, where Adrian Bakong will speak on cardiometabolic disease among Asian people, prevalence predictions, and precision medicine. And the registration link is in the message in the chat box. Please join us for that. Also, the recording of this will be available on the CARE YouTube channel next week, I believe. So with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you again, Dean Kim, for joining us, and look forward to seeing you and working with you in the future.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.